Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Latina Style Latinas and Heritage Conservation virtual event. Please welcome our moderator, Mr. Robert Bard, President and CEO of Latina Style Inc.
Good morning, everybody. Wonderful to join you. As you can see, I'm outfitted, ready for my park visit. I have my Jack Hanna, hat and attire. So welcome to everybody who wants to know about what does the National Park Foundation do and how we can work with them. For Latinos across the country and Latinas, we're in the midst celebrating the tail end of Hispanic Heritage Month, celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. That's a special time of the year for all of us. Although if you went to online, you would have seen there is thousands of celebrations. When we first launched Latina Style, in 1993, there was only one big celebration in the country, and that was in Washington, D.C. Now, every state has celebrations that are even larger than what we used to have in D.C. And we have celebrations in every state of the nation. We are delighted that you were able to join us. Celebrating, the work of the National Park Foundation is very, very important. We are celebrating what Latinos and Latinas do to preserve these incredible, important locations and parks. We must remember that none of the parks were there since before, I think it was President Roosevelt, who was the first time, the one that began to create the parks in the United States to save the parks. Today, we have a number of parks across the nation, and we have a number of Latino heritage sites across the nation that we also want to protect. Some of this, of these locations, some of these places in the parks represent, the initial conquest by the Spanish, but it also represents, also the indigenous population that was here in the United States. Today, for the first time, we have a Native American, a person of Native American ancestry as the Secretary of the Department of the Interior, and that is Secretary Deb Haaland. That is, something that would have been unheard of for many years. We welcome her and her input, and I'm sure her sensitivities will help us, moving forward to preserve all these historical sites. The historical sites encumber ancestries like the Spanish, the French, the indigenous, African intersections have created, this incredible, beautiful group of people that are, the Latino and the Latinas in the United States. To welcome us, to give us a welcome for the conference or for this chat, we are delighted that we have Congressman Raul Grijalva, who is the chairman of the Committee on Natural Resources Committee, and we have a message from him for all of us who are here in this meeting today.
Hello, I'm Raul Grijalva. I'm chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, the full committee, and I'm very proud and privileged to have that position. And I want to thank Latina Style Magazine and all of you participating in this Nuestras Historias, preserving and protecting our roots by protecting our historic places. It is an important one, and to all of you that are busy professionally uh, and and as advocates for protecting historic places for the Latino community, thank you so much. The contributions of Latino to this country are multiple and large and profound. Uh, and it has to be reflected in the story we tell about our nation. And one of the best places is that asset of ours, the public places, the public lands that belong to all of us. Those need to be recognized, and those places that are significant and important to the Latino community must be part of what the federal government, through its parks and monuments and other public places, provides to the public to tell the story, the full story of America. And as this demographic change continues in this country, that full story will become more and more critical and more important to tell. So it's a task, and it is an important task. In the reconciliation package, Build Back Better, we doubled to $100 billion the amount of money that historical preservation will now have within Interior to do just that, to tell the story, to bring the contributions of Latinas to the fabric of this country to light. Those contributions are deep and rich, from the arts and culture to philanthropy, to leadership roles, and to protecting and preserving that history is vital. The next generations that come up must know that their place in this country of ours is there, and it's being told and interpreted. And so all of the hardworking Latina women dedicated to the preservation of our culture and our heritage, thank you so much. You know, there's a quote by an author that I began reading when I was in college, Vi Deloria, an indigenous author, and he said something very profound. And I think it's something that needs to guide the federal government as it moves forward. As we establish the American Latino Museum in Washington, D.C. as the centerpiece to preserve the culture and the heritage, we must also do that across the country. And Vine Delora said something very important, and that should be the guide to how we go forward. He said, before the white man can relate to others, he must forego the pleasure of defining them. The white man must learn to stop viewing history as a plot against himself. For too long, we have not had the opportunity or that door open so that the rest of America can see who we are and what we've done to make this nation great. It's also time that our children, our grandchildren, and those generations to come can see what we've done and how we've made this nation great and how we continue to contribute. So I'm dedicated to working on that. I'm dedicated to working with you to make sure that our rich history, our rich culture, and the contributions that we've made to this great country of ours are preserved, interpreted, and told and retold to the American people. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you so much, Congressman Grijalva. Congressman Grijalva, has got over 40 years of service to our community and to our country. And he has been a champion all the way, all that time, and especially for Latinas, and especially for the environment. And he's been, he mentioned that the budget for the parks for preservation was double in this budget, and he had a lot to do with that. So thank you so much, Congressman. And we look forward to continuing working with you. And we thank you so much for all the work and leadership that you have demonstrated on all these years of service to our country. Now, I would like to be able to introduce to you, we're going to have a light a discussion on what it means really to have the National Park Foundation and what it means, what the foundation will be working on for the future. So We have in our panel, we have a distinguished panel of very important leaders that are joining us today. Two of them are board members of the National Park Foundation, and one of them is the chief of staff to the foundation. So let me begin by asking for you guys to recognize Ms. Patty Arvielo. She's on the board of directors, of course, of the National Park Foundation. And Ms. Arvielo, Patty, who was among Latina Style Top Latinas in 2020. She is a power Latina with a phenomenal background and breakthrough accomplishment. As a national recognized businesswoman, she's the co-founder and president of New America Funding, the largest Latina-owned mortgage company in the US. Most recently, she has been named among the 2020 Corporate Latina Executives of the Year and is the first woman recipient of the 2021 Hands That Build Big Brothers, Big Sisters Award. As a National Park Foundation director, she has turned her leadership as a power Latina to champion Latino heritage sites within the national parks and give a voice to the Latino Heritage Fund program. Please welcome our director, our very own Latina Woman of the Year, Patty Arvielo. Hello, Patty. Our next panelist is Melinda Mindy Burbano. Lindy Burbano Stearns, you may recognize from, she's actually a movie star, a TV star. She's been nominated for, as a Emmy-nominated television anchor. She co-founded the Stearns Family Charitable Foundation and currently serves as the Chief Kindness Officer at Kind Lending LLC. As a National Park Foundation Board Director, Patty has turned her leadership to give voice to the Latino heritage sites within our national parks. And she champions the Latino Heritage Fund program. As a National Park Foundation Board Director and Power Latina, she has turned her leadership into advocating for the Latino Heritage Fund program. Welcome, Melinda.
Buenos dias. You can call me Mindy.
Okay, Mindy. And our third panelist is a power Latina who is right there in the middle, in the midst of the park, Ruth Hernandez Prescott. She is the Chief of Staff for the National Park Foundation. Ruth advises the National Park Foundation Board of Directors and executive team, and she assists in the establishment of strategies to enhance the operating efficiency of the organization. She has a key role in ensuring that the leadership at the park knows the contribution that Latinos and Latinas have made to the establishment of the parks and to the parks themselves. So welcome all, ladies. We're going to begin a discussion. First of all, I would like, we have Patty, Mindy, and Ruth, but let me begin with Patty and Mindy. Why was joining the board of the foundation important to you, and why? Obviously, you are extremely busy ladies. You have a lot to do, and you have a lot on your plate, and you have chosen this assignment for what reason? Patty, why don't you tell us first? Why did you join?
You're on mute.
I actually was introduced to the National Park Foundation by Mindy's husband, Glenn Stearns. And I think that representation of Latinas in boards across America is very important. And I also believe that if we don't see the past, we can't see the future. So when they came to me and they said, Patty, we want you to be on the National Park Foundation, I dije, que, like what? But then they started to tell me about the Latino Heritage Fund and what they had been doing. And that really tugged on my heartstrings because I've been advocating for Latinos in our country for many, many years. And so I think that it's important that I represent the many Latinas looking up at me. They need to see themselves on boards as important as the National Park Foundation.
Mindy?
Buenos dias. Thank you for having me. You know, I love Patty because I think we share a different background when it comes to our appreciation of the parks. And what I love what Patty brings to for the Latina voice, especially with her position and her background and diverse knowledge and passion for the Latina community. But I grew up, the parks have always been part of my family. Now, my grandfather's Ecuadorian, my father's Ecuadorian, and that's my background. But when we grew up in, I grew up in Oregon, very far away from my home country, but, and it wasn't really talked about much growing up. So it was a very different experience for me. But one thing my father did instill within me is a deep appreciation for the natures and the great outdoors. He worked for the Forest Service through college. And then when we were young, we would camp and backpack and hike and look at the forest and see nature. And we would constantly find ourselves within many of our beautiful park systems across the country on road trips and things like that. And so I have been a passionate park advocate since I can remember. And when I had the opportunity to join the board, it was the quickest yes that I said, because I believe that our national park system is one of the most important things, nonpartisan. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves our parks. They are the treasure in the United States. They need to be preserved and protected. And with Latinos making up 60 million of our people here in the United States, we have a big say in what is happening in the park system. And the education is very exciting to spread among the community. So I'm really happy to be here and spread the love, my love for the parks, and hope that the Latino community can also share that love.
Thank you. And Ruth, you are in the eye of the storm, if you will, because everybody knows that the chief of staff, for whatever office exists, kind of decides the agenda that whatever happens, you know, everywhere. Whether it's chief of staff to the president of the United States, or the chief of staff of a CEO, the chief of staff in organization really is the person who has to think very hard. My leadership needs to see this. My leadership doesn't really need to see this. And you set up an agenda that is actually what the park leadership is going to see first, and what they're going to assume is the priority of facts or things that they need to address. So how did you end up there?
Well, first of all, let me say that to our amazing board members, they got our work and they help us set the agenda. And these two Latinas do a wonderful job at personally inspiring me. My road here, my professional road here, really began as a child. As I was thinking about this opportunity, I was reflecting that I wish my grandparents and my dad were around so that I could call them up and say, you know, why was it so important that we be outside and that we do barbecues, and that my poor daddy would try to park trailers for campgrounds and a variety of other escapades, but they're gone. So I was left to reflect on my own. But, you know, barbecues, being outside, going to football games with family, these were important things. And as my sister and I got older, my parents loved history, they loved culture, they loved the great spaces in our country, and they would load us up literally in a Chevrolet Impala and drive us around the country during the summer. They were teachers. And we drove to San Antonio to see the missions. We drove to Big Bend to see the Rio Grande River and the border of our nations. We drove to Colorado to see magnificent mountains, and just instilled in me, even at an early age, just a love and appreciation for these great spaces. But as I got older, what I came to realize were the stories behind these places is what made them so significant. And finding my story in them became an important quest for me. I've spent most of my career in higher ed, but I had an opportunity 7 years ago to come to work for the National Park Foundation, and it has been the joy of my professional career. every day we wake up and we get to think about how are we going to preserve and protect these special places for the next generations and generations beyond. So that's my story of how I got here. It is an amazing journey, and I'm just fortunate to be here, Robert.
Thank you, Ruth. I think that all of us are very aware of the horror that is happening in the Amazon and unprotected wilderness that, you know, is being destroyed by complete areas that are like hundreds of acres every day are just wiped out there. And thank God that here in the United States, you know, we have advocacy that really prevents that, while at the same time we have the Park Service that protects all of those. Let me ask you, Patty, do you have a favorite park?
Well, I do. Yellowstone National Park's my favorite park. I happen to live part-time in Montana, so I'm 30 minutes away from the park. So I spend a lot of time with my guests visiting the park. So you know, definitely that has to be my favorite. The wonderful thing about being a board member of the National Park Foundation is that all our meetings are held in the national parks. So it's like a surprise every single time they tell us there's a board meeting coming up, because you have this excitement around visiting the park. And they're very inclusive of our family. We're allowed to bring our kids and our spouses along with us. So they're super Latino, like they love us to bring our whole family, which is a big deal for me. But yeah, so it definitely is Yellowstone National Park, although I've been able to visit a few parks with the board, and you know, they all hold special places for special people. And I think there's so much history in the parks, and just the demographic of employees in the park. You know, I look around, I look at the name tags, it's simple, you know, Hernandez, Lopez, Sanchez. So it makes me very proud to be, you know, part of the story with them.
How about you, Mindy? Which one is your favorite park?
Oh, it's so hard to pick one. There's so many. I mean, I'm probably more drawn towards the natural aspect, you know, just really getting deep in nature. And I lived, like Patty, I lived in Wyoming, right at the edge of Teton National Park. Now, Robert, have you visited Jackson Hole in your lifetime?
God,
curious.
we just came back Monday from Wyoming. You know, my wife Lupita, our boss, really, our co owner of Latina Style, was asked to go speak at the university in Laramie. So we didn't make it. We didn't make it close enough to Jackson Hole, but we will be visiting soon. And the beauty of that part of the country, it was incredible. As soon as we got back, and we landed here in Dallas, where we live, and started driving through the streets, we were like shocked how much more beautiful Laramie was. And it was like a magical time that we spent there.
Yeah, Wyoming is pretty well untouched. I mean, there's only 500,000 people in the whole state, so it's pretty small. But when you look at what our park systems are within the Grand Teton National Park, right at the base of Yellowstone National Park, where Patty is, and you just, it's like otherworldly, and you think of God's creation. And I think it's just some of our parks are some of God's greatest work. And when you can step in there, you really, I just think it's so important to get in the parks, because when you get in nature, you are recharged and you find who you are in the parks. And you know, I love that the park has a program where all fourth graders can enter into the parks free of charge, any fourth grader across the United States, because that age, that 10 years old, that's when my father was taking us camping and backpacking and showing me the parks and educating me on nature and how important it is to preserve it. And that's such an impressionable age. And I don't know if your viewers or your readership understand that 10-year-olds are free to go into any park anywhere in the country, because that's the age where you want to introduce your family to the park, because it stays with them for the rest of their life and it makes such an impression. And it did for me, and that's why I'm so passionate now. So when you ask me my favorite park, of course the Tetons, because I looked at those beautiful mountains every day and was recreating in that park. But I've been through so many. Zion is incredible. Briar, you look at Bryce National Park, and some of these right here on the southwest, they blow your mind. You can't believe the earth is created in such magnificent ways. So I get very excited, as you can tell.
Well, you know, I think it's with all of us, especially the ones that are city locked in a way, and
Mhm.
we don't get to see the nature and get to experience how nature itself like feeds your soul. It gets in your heart. It gets, you know, I was a Boy Scout when I was a kid, and we used to go parking, and I mean, not parking, we used to go camping, and everything was unbelievable. You know, the memories stay with you forever. Ruth, the last year, it's been 18 months, if you will, it's been a nightmare for everybody all over the world, actually, especially how it relates of you being able to be out there and being in nature. How are the parks preparing themselves to welcome the people to come back?
Well, Robert, that's a great question. And it's interesting. What we've learned in these last 18 months is people love their parks more than ever. They never, in fact, left the parks. We have been dealing with, our Park Service has been addressing record visitations across some of the more iconic sites, Yellowstone, Grand Teton, Grand Canyon, et cetera. And Park Foundation has been pleased to have the opportunity to help message things like how to recreate responsibly. Early in the pandemic, when it was clear people wanted to be outside, we helped fund programs that talked about how to be safe in a park, socially distance, you know, providing that sort of messaging where people could be safe and still enjoy the parks. And the Park Foundation, through the support of our funders, our philanthropists, we're looking at how we're going to continue supporting the Park Service evolve into the 21st century park, because we know people want to experience parks in new and different ways. We don't, you know, for me, I don't need to be on social media when I'm hiking in the Tetons, but for some, that's part of the experience. And so how we can work with the Park Service and the individual sites to make certain that those parks are welcoming and receptive to the visitors that we want to come in the coming 18 months. But
So,
Robert, you didn't ask me my favorite park.
you have one, because I figured that you being the chief of staff, you have to tread very lightly.
He loves them all, like her children,
very
equally.
lightly to pick a favorite.
So my favorite park today, and I would be in trouble with my peeps in Texas, is of course Big Bend National Park. I took my first trip there as like an 8-year-old, and I've been going back, and most people have no idea that we have 9,000-foot peaks in the state of Texas. But Robert, I was raised in Dallas, and I know flat central Texas, the north central Texas is not the most scenic. But when you see those mountains coming up as you round the bend there in Marathon, it's pretty spectacular and never ceases to lower my blood pressure. So I had to get a plug in for Big Bend.
You know, I should say maybe unfortunately, I have never visited the Grand Canyon. And Lupita, you know, speaks of the Grand Canyon as a nature center where your spirits are really lifted and where God's really touched the people. We're looking forward to going back, to go in there soon. And but most of all, I think that what we need to convey to the families is the fact that nature touches you and gets in your heart, and how it helps you, you know, enhance the quality of your life. You know, another thing that I would like to talk to you about a little bit, and especially since the young ladies are on the board, and you, who are the major traffic cop over there at the foundation, is how do we keep, you know, how Patty mentioned the diversity of people working at the parks. How are the parks bringing the people in to work there? You know, how are how do you keep the diversity of the population, of your work population?
I think Ruth would be best to answer that because you work a little more hand in hand with the in the MPS.
Well, the workforce of the future is something that's ever present on the minds of the leadership at Department of Interior and at the National Park Service. And having a workforce that is reflective of the demographics of our country is priority one. Former acting director, David Vela, who is a dear friend of ours, friends with Mindy and Patty, and it was certainly one of his passions to make certain that we were, Park Service was doing things to enhance its visibility as a career path. David has a similar story to ours, and his family drove from Wharton, Texas to the Rocky Mountains, and it began a lifelong love affair with parks that culminated with him being acting director. But having this notion of a diverse workforce is certainly something that is foremost on their minds. And then at the foundation, we do things like have donors that want to support. How do we do that? What are the strategies we can pursue, the Park Service can pursue to attract diverse workforce? How can we build apprentice programs that showcase the opportunities that exist? How do we fund conservation corps and introduce young people to these great places? So these are strategies that we pursue in partnership with the Park Service to try to make certain that workforce is diverse.
So, you know, Mindy and Patty, what does the board do at the foundation? What's a board meeting like?
We have the best board meetings anywhere.
I hope it's not all about budgets.
No, we get to go to, I mean, you know what, Robert? We got to go to the Grand Canyon for our meetings are at parks. We've been to Yosemite, we've been to Grand Canyon, we're supposed to go to the Everglades last year. So our board meetings have the greatest locations and venues. I can't complain at all.
No, and I think that when Mindy and I, joined almost at the same time, we did bring an element of spiciness to the board. So it's been really fun. We definitely are ourselves on the board. But when I visit the parks, I'm the first one to notice that the demographics of employees are primarily Latino. And also the visitors of the parks are primarily Latino. The barrier to entry is very low. I grew up my whole life. We never stayed in a hotel. We camped, or we stayed maybe in a motorhome. So I think that being seen in the parks is one thing, but having the leadership in Latinos in America looking up and seeing themselves in important roles is critical. And I appreciate the board's, I appreciate Glenn choosing me. Like I say, yes, you need to pick us. You need to choose us and pull us up. And, we're not easy to find. Latinas are super quiet. We are emerging demographic in our country as far as powerhouse business leaders. But, we're very quiet when raising our hands for important positions in this country on prolific boards. So I'll be really honest with you. When I first showed up, I was very intimidated. There are very powerful people on this board. And but I've found my voice on the board, and I appreciate Ruth. I mean, when Ruth threw out Ruth Hernandez, I was like, okay, I have someone here.
She's my people.
Well, I'm very outspoken and I'm very passionate about what I do, but sometimes that's intimidating to people because they don't understand our background or our culture. But this board definitely does. And the importance of what we're doing around the Latino Heritage Fund is critical. I think my main initiative here is to get it to my network, because Latinos need to give. We need to ask for us to contribute to our history and to our future, because I know most Latinos like me want to be significant, right, in our lives. We want to matter. And one part of me mattering to my family is being significant on this board as a leader and as a donor.
How about you, Mindy? What do you think?
What do I think in particular in regards to what Patty was saying about representation?
About the makeup of the workforce.
I think it's what I really appreciate now is how diverse things have become, more than ever in the history of ever. I mean, like you said, it's such a growing demographic too, and a very strong and influential demographic. When 3 out of 4 Americans agree that the Latino culture has a huge influence on American, it's in America, whether it's in food and music and culture and family values. There are so many strong influences by the Latino community. So it's exciting to see representation in a place that is so beloved and is so important to our mental health, our mental well-being, and to our history and the preservation of stories of great Latinos that have come and settled here and have created opportunity. I mean, these are important. We have 11 significant Latino-based sites that have very rich heritage within the national park system. And it's wonderful that they have such acknowledgement and support. And like Patty says, the Latino community is a powerful community with a strong economic, power behind them. And I think their support is crucial to make sure that these sites are preserved and that they continue to add to the educational aspects and teaching younger generations how important it is. Because if we don't support this and fix it and educate, people will take it for granted, and then it will so easily be consumed and destroyed. And more than anything, Robert, I think that the preservation and the support for preservation is something we need to emphasize in our communities to protect these sacred places.
Ruth, let me ask you something then. Latina Style, and especially Lupita Colmenero, is the founder of Parents Step Ahead, our nonprofit for the company, working with the schools in educating parents on how to make the life of the children better, both in schools and in society. Does the parks have a program to take to the schools every year?
Are the Latino Outdoors too? Isn't that part of it, Ruth?
Well, our Open Outdoors for Kids is our signature program that we run. And it is designed to do exactly what you just described, Robert, getting young fourth graders into national parks. We have 13 target cities that we work with directly with local partners to make certain that we provide the transportation to bring young people, primarily Title I schools, into national parks that are near them, to introduce them to the opportunity, to introduce them to what a national park is. We've been talking a lot about our big landscape parks, Grand Canyon. Robert, we can talk about the first time I ever saw the canyon. I cried, but that's another story. We talked about the Tetons, we talked about Yellowstone, but Big Bend, but there's some amazing sites across our nation that are literally a building that tell the story of something significant in our lives. And as an educational tool, getting our young people into these special places, Central High, Little Rock, Dr. Martin Luther King's home in Atlanta, the missions in San Antonio, Cesar Chavez home. These are places that have a story. They are historical and historically important for our kids to know about. And so that then when, as Patty was saying and Mindy was affirming, this notion of then you have to value it before you want to invest in preserving it. And so that is a strong mission. And we find our donors really, this resonates with them, the idea that we would be using the national parks as an educational tool. And I will also add that during COVID, our parks were able to pivot to a lot of online learning, so that even if we might not could get to a park literally, we had the opportunity virtually to visit some of these very, very special places. I think the Everglades did a magnificent job of pivoting their educational programs online for the benefit of school children. So yes, we think these places are points of education that need to be preserved, and we need to expose as many of our youth to them as possible.
You know, I went to school in California in LA, and then, you know, when I moved to Washington, DC, I used to see all the buses that would bring the children to the Smithsonian museums. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know, if you're a kid in the West, you don't get to see any of this. And it just never happens. We were fortunate enough that through our work, we were able to take teachers to Washington, DC, so at least they would experience what the monuments and all the things that they talked about in the classrooms. They had a chance to, you know, to take that back to their classes and show them to the kids. the funding for you to be able to bring the kids to the schools, where does it come from? Is that part of what Congressman Grijalva was talking about?
No, until 2016, National Park Foundation didn't receive any federal support. We started with zero every year, and through the generosity of our donors, we were able to pursue priority projects for Park Service. So we would cultivate donors just as perhaps your university does with graduates and other friends of the university. We cultivate donor prospects for our programs and projects across the country at 420 plus sites. In 2016, Congress authorized the Park Foundation to receive $5 million in appropriations, which we have been receiving for the last several years. We matched that money from the federal government with private dollars to leverage and double, sometimes even triple what we can push out to a national park. But we are a 501c3 fundraising organization that exists solely to support the philanthropic needs of the National Park Service.
Well, and it's a time, you know, we live in times where the funding, there is such a huge competition because COVID-19 really put a major stress on all the nonprofits actually as well. We would love with Latina Style, you know, help you put a campaign together, a fundraising campaign. You know, we also have the, you know, the Latino Museum that is going to come, you know, on the mall in Washington, D.C. and that the fundraising is going on right now. And it's, thank God it got approved by Congress to be put in the, you know, to create the Latino Museum, but they're in the same boat. They're raising the funds. And they're going to need a lot of funds, in the billions actually. We would love to be able, and in a coming issue of Latina Style, you're going to be able to learn about what the park does, and we'll talk a little bit on Mindy, a little bit about Patty. We'll talk about you, and we'll see how, you know, we can help you in any way we can to help to get the funding. The Latino, particularly the Latino heritage sites, there is, what is it? There's like 40 sites that are.
Is it 24 or no, the story?
24.
24. And 11 are historic landmarks.
So how do those get designated? Do you have like a waiting list of other Latino historical sites that you would like to be included?
Mindy, Patty?
That's you, right? No?
I mean, yeah, there's an ask. I mean, currently we've identified a site that we are trying to preserve and elevate our voices in. But, you know, when I first joined the board, I said, I always say it's so funny that many of our states were Mexico before the United States of America. So it's my mission to really identify in all of the states that belonged to Mexico before the US, to see that history and the stories being told. So it's a slow process to identify because everybody, I'm sure, has their hands up. But, you know, our board and what Ruth has just explained as being a nonprofit, we have some of the most generous givers in the United States of America contributing to the National Park Foundation. I'm actually blown away by the commitment of many of the notable people in our country that really support what we're doing. And not only that, really support the Latino Heritage Fund within the National Park Foundation. You know, I always say the minute we start talking, if it's Ruth or Mindy or myself start talking about being Latino in this country, everybody else wants to be a Latino too, because it's really, there's passion behind what we do, right? And a lot of misconceptions about really, we didn't immigrate here. Most of our population growth is US born Latinos. So I really work on identifying and removing the misconceptions of who we are, what we look like, why we are culturally Latina. You know, I wasn't born in Mexico, my mom was, but I was raised culturally Latino. So as you can imagine, with the emerging population being what it is, We have many sites that get thrown at us right now, and funding is key. And that's why my biggest ask is that the Latino community come together. There's many of us that are notables. There's many of us that are growing big billion-dollar companies. And I would like us too to have a foundation, place here at the National Park Foundation and have a place for us to donate our money to support what they're doing for our country and our history. So that's why I continue to say it. Yes, a lot of the nonprofit boards that I sit on, I believe in mentorship. We are all asking right now, but this is history. This is our history, our story,
And our future.
and our future. So with what's been going on in media for the last few years about the perception of Latinos in this country, this is a place where we can put a permanent mark on our history. So that's why I'm so really passionate about what I'm doing for the board, and really still on a day-by-day learning about our history and our national monuments. That's the other thing. I want national monuments to represent our culture in Washington, D.C., because there's the stories, we can't have a piece of it missing. And we are the #1 non-white demographic in this country and growing. So that's why I'm so passionate about what we're doing and the sites that we're identifying, because we just need to make sure that those stories are being told.
What she said.
What she said. Robert, I would say that there's someone that I just saw a chat pop up who's on the webinar. David Vela is actually in the audience.
David!
And your question about how sites get designated is a very complicated answer. And I wish David could be a part, because he could explain it, but it is a long, there's research, there's public opinion, there is an assessment, and it takes many times years for a site to actually receive the level of a national park site. But suffice it to say that we have champions here on this board who are vocal about their support of more monuments, more sites that tell our story for the forever.
Yeah, Ruth, I was involved, a while back on how you choose stamps in the United States. The people, and I'm with you with the nightmare that it is to get through those things.
Red tape.
Yeah, it's not red tape. It's like
Bureaucracy.
red blood. It's red blood, because you have to give your blood, and you have to give money, and you have to. It's incredibly hard, but we really need to start somewhere. For the first time, actually, in our country, there's been a kind of a push to bring diversity to the forefront. The greatest challenge that I see, especially in the corporate world, is that diversity for a lot of them is just a color issue. It's not a cultural issue. And diversity is not black and white. Diversity can be anything. Even in the Hispanic world, we're made up of so many different backgrounds that they can never, pigeonhole us in one, in one little basket. We believe that our power, what's really going to, in talking to what Patty was addressing, and I believe it too, the way we're going to change things is because of purchasing power. So that's the part on talking about. I'm going back to the funding, because it's crucial for the work that you're trying to do. Do you have a corporate initiative? Does Pepsi have a funding that they give to the parks? Does the competitor Coca-Cola? How about the car companies? How about all the companies that make a living out of our community?
You got it,
That's
Robert.
something that is in place already?
We have a lot of that, Ruth. We have a really
do.
strong corporate partnership team that it works on we've got some great corporate partnerships, Ruth.
We do. Subaru is our longtime automotive partner. They are just tremendous partner. Coca-Cola is a longtime partner. REI, LL Bean. I'm going to leave somebody out here and be in trouble.
Did Apple? Didn't we just join something?
Apple is a fantastic partner, and
Nature Valley was a bit.
Nature Valley is still is a great partner. And
You're working on Ecos brand. I don't know if that where we are. I know we were in talks with Ecos to get a partnership too, and always looking for opportunities, Robert. Just like you said, I'm always out there thinking, oh, these people would be a great partner, because partnering with the parks is a win for any organization. It really is a win-win, because you align yourself with something that is so beloved and it's non-polarizing. The parks are something that everybody can appreciate, and everybody, for the most part, I can't imagine anybody who doesn't enjoy or love our parks. So when you align yourself and you have that national park stamp on your product, it just elevates your brand. And I think it's just, and the exposure for us brings more awareness and obviously more dollars too, which is so important to get those educational messages out and support for these monuments.
You know, one of the things that concerns me about the parks really is the protection of the parks from something that is inevitable, it seems. And that is this horrific fires that take place every year. Just so that I think it was at Sequoias National Park, where you're putting tinfoil on the trees to protect them from fire. But even, you know, you have to be so careful, because even somebody, the last fire that was started by a lady making coffee, I think, and it goes on, you know, once the fires start, they're very, very difficult to stop. So I already offered, and I talked to your team, that if you find me a Latina firefighter on the job, you send me a picture, that will be the cover of our magazine. That would be a major story, because I don't think our nation has ever seen that. So,
wow, I know some people in the fire department. I'll have to call.
Yeah.
so
They're fighting fires up here.
I want to make the offer in public, so you know that it is. You know, I would
I will
like
definitely put the ask out there through my platform, We All Grow Latina, where we have over 200,000 Latina followers that engage with us on a monthly basis. I co-own the company. So I will put the personal ask for the Latina firefighter
There's gotta be some in there.
to show up on the platform. So it's a great opportunity. You know, it's a great opportunity, and I appreciate you saying that. I think the more and more visible we are in every field, in media and in television, is where you will start to see us rise. And we do not see ourselves in media or in television in pretty much any role outside of possibly a gardener or a housekeeper. So I'm a big advocate of pushing out, successful Latinas, self-made Latinas. It's important that we see ourselves in the media and in television. So not all of us can be J-Lo, even though I want to be J-Lo or Eva Longoria. But so that's why I
you're so much better, Patty.
Oh God, I love them. I mean, I really do. But it is really important. And that is something that I work on, Robert, on a daily basis, is showing the faces of successful self-made Latinas in this country, because we don't see ourselves. And so I'm going to find you a Latina firefighter.
We can probably collaborate, Patty, because we, through our funders, our corporate partners and our generous donors, we did fund an all Latina trail crew at Grand Teton last summer. So, and they may be finishing up a second summer. I'll have to check on that. So I bet we can get that picture for you,
I
Robert.
think we're going to get that picture for you, Robert. You asked.
Is that cover? Group. I just want to know if the cover's going to say chingona. Because she would be
Listen, our work is to empower Latinas, so wherever we find in the kind of Latinas that you find in Latina style are people such as yourselves. We look at the movers and shakers, the ones that are really doing the battles. We do not do People magazine kind of coverage on anything. It's mostly everything is about empowering and about putting Latinas in face of kids, in face of our community that they would never thought that they would exist there. Our recent issue of Latina Style, we found 11 Latinas at NASA that are not astronauts, they're scientists. One Latina is the one that created the arm for the rover that is now in Mars. Another one helped develop the parachute that allow us to drop in the rover, into Mars. I mean, there are Latinas everywhere, except that when they're really committed to their work and they're really accomplished, they most of the time just, in their work.
Yes, we're a silent population.
Yeah. So that's the kind of Latina we want, we're always wanting to see, if you indulge me for a second, because I think we're going to be running out of time, but I would like to ask Lupita Colmenero to activate her camera and her ¿cómo se dice? El microphone. So she can, there she is. So she can, and Lupita is our partner, is our chief operating officer for the company. And she is particularly sensitive to the parks.
And I don't think we're running out of time, Robert, because we still have an hour, right? I believe.
I
But
think 30
anyway,
minutes, 30
yes.
minutes.
Well, I just want to start by saying that my mind and heart is bursting in pride because of you ladies.
Oh.
You are doing an amazing job. And the fact that to know that Latino stories are in over the 400 parks, right? That you find traces of Latino story, whether it's the first Spaniard or Latinos that set foot in this land and this part of the country, going back to the 1500s, and that you are bringing all of that to light, and it is Latinas doing this work. I mean, I'm just so proud of you.
Yeah.
So proud of
you,
you and
Lupita.
very grateful. And Patty, Yellowstone and Montana, it is also one of my favorites. And it has to be Montana, I must say, because I had the opportunity to go in a press trip a while back, because Yellowstone covers a lot of states, right?
Lots.
But Montana specifically.
Yes.
It is.
so.
I tell Robert that for me, it was like a walking on a postal car or driving on a postal car. It was magical.
Yeah, and it was truly a gift during COVID. It was like the gift of everything last year. And so many people have found themselves wanting to be in open areas, hence, Coeur d'Alene being the #1 city to grow in our country last year because of outdoors. So I think a lot of us are looking for that space. And I was lucky to find it 5 years ago when we lived part-time in Montana. So I do find it as a gift as well. But I will be honest with you, it is because of the National Park Foundation that I have the love for the parks and the passion behind what they represent, especially to the Latino community.
Yes, well, it is because of your leadership, and people that is also on the board like you. I mean, people don't believe me when I say I was driving and there were signs where stop so the bears can cross the road.
I know.
It was that beautiful. And again, I know that the foundation is a strong organization, and I know that you have all that human resources to bring the finance that is needed to run it. And obviously it's a constant work, but I would like to emphasize how critical and important it is to reach out to our schools and make sure that our kids, and especially Latino kids, right? Latino kids enjoy this beauty because we are a blessed nation. That beauty of the resources, natural resources that we have, it's huge. It's like compared to none in the world, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And many of our kids, unfortunately, don't have the opportunity to take advantage of that. So we are also willing, it's not just the cover or Latina style that we are putting on the table, but our offer, our resources as well in our work to reach out on that initiatives route, to work with the schools and make sure that our kids enjoy what we're talking about.
Lupita, that is so lovely. We organize our work around 2 pillars: protect and connect. The protect category is what you would expect. It's renovating trails, preserving, etc. The connect is all about what you're just talking about. It's connecting those young audiences to our national parks through education programs, through school outreach. And so that is our twin, those are our twin pillars. And we spend every day talking to prospective donors about how they can help us advance those twin goals.
And I think that there's a lot of friends groups that align with the parks that we actually do not oversee. And so as you go to different parks, you will find friends groups that do reach out to the local communities to bring the children into communities, just like Yosemite does. Yosemite has a program where they outreach to students and they bring them into the parks and they house them. So I think a lot of individual parks have friends groups that align also in a similar mission to educate. But I too truly believe that we need to get Latino children out of the significant communities they're in, outside, to see
Yeah.
what the world and this country has to offer. Since again, we do not see ourselves portrayed in media or television the way we see ourselves. So we need to really take that effort and purposely take them from the communities into the parks so that they can see themselves. Somebody in the chat here asked us how we could get more Latinos in conservation. That's exactly how we do it. You need to choose us. We need to be purposeful and we need to be have actionable plans to go in and choose us. Like I still want to be chosen because I'm a Latina, right? Because it's important. So that's why I speak up on behalf of just really, I call it diversity and included. Until we are being included, the diversity and inclusion manuals don't work. We need to be included. So I think you'll be excited to see that there are a lot of groups that work hand in hand with the parks to bring the children in.
Yeah, I know, Lupita, you have the Parent Step Ahead Foundation with the college kids and I know part of that is health and wellness. So, you know, these messages can go across different organizations and really start, you know, when you talk about health and wellness and kids going to college, part of a healthy, balanced life is having those moments to get out and get into these systems, which create more health and wellness, which helps lift and depression and those types of things, and getting these kids to continue their education when they have an appreciation for nature and the thing and how it can feed them and serve them. You know, they're even better set for their future as they go off into these college programs.
Mindy, we just got back, like I said, from Wyoming. It's hard to get there.
Yeah.
It took us three different stops on our flight. We had to go from Dallas to Houston to Denver, and then from Denver to Laramie. It was
It was worth it. It was worth it.
It is worth it in your lifetime, I think, to make a destination. Like, you know, you haven't been to the Grand Canyon yet, Robert, and you know, that is, there are places to go, but also in every community, if you look on the website, there are parks really close to a lot of communities around the country. And you just have to go look on the website and you can find what park is in your area, because there's usually some sort of natural conservation area related to the parks, which isn't as far as going all the way to Wyoming or all the way to Montana. You know, those are incredible places, but you're right, they are difficult to get to from a lot of places in the United States.
So, you know, just keep in mind, please use us and abuse us to establish partnerships, local partnerships, and, you know, to invite also our audience and our network to do the same in the local communities, because, you know, I'm talking about kids from K to 12, that for many of them, the trips that they get, the school trips, is basically their vacations, you know, for lifetime. So visiting one of this size, I know that it will be just an incredible experience for them. Anything we can do to help, keep us in mind.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
You know we will. Ruth will be calling you.
Absolutely.
Just be ready.
I'll be there, you know, to promote your all the information that you have available, especially the literature that has to do with school kids from K to 12. That's what the foundation does. And also we have partnership with colleges as well and universities, you know, like now Wyoming University and Laramie. So yes, absolutely. I think we have questions, right, Gloria? We have some questions. I've been seeing some questions popping up on the chat, and I really would love for you ladies to address those. Let's see.
All right, Lupita. Robert, do you want to take the first question on that?
Why don't you go ahead and do it?
Okay. So the first question is from one of our audience members. I am a conservation manager at an urban park. This is my first management position in this field. What do you suggest I do to develop effective teams?
You know, I'll take that one. I employ about 4,800 team members. And every single day, I continue to enrich myself to be a better leader. So first off, if you're Latina, show your Latina-isms, right? Your passion for the role that you serve. The other thing is make sure that your team members know exactly what their roles are and also where you're going as a team. I think if you can kind of send those messages on a daily basis, it'll really enhance your teamwork. But really, I think as a Latina business leader, it took me about 30 years to be comfortable with who I am, letting my passion shine, I said what empathy, is really important. And I think that being an empathetic leader in today's climate business world is really important.
She nailed it.
What she
100%.
said.
Thank you, Patty.
You're
Now,
welcome.
another question that we have here, how can Latinos help and volunteer to advance these great causes?
Patty mentioned a few minutes ago about our local friends groups. We have over 200 partner organizations across the country. They're independent 501c3 who work to advance a particular site, a particular park, Yellowstone, Yosemite, Grand Canyon, etc. Those are great places to plug in, to volunteer, to philanthropically support, to get to know sites, deepen your involvement with them. Of course, we always welcome involvement through the National Park Foundation, our Champion Society, but we offer ways to deepen your engagement with the national parks across the country. The local friends groups, they're specific to a national park. So that would be a couple of ways I would recommend you getting involved.
Thank you, Ruth, for that. And another question that we have here is, I have worked for different environmental organizations, and I have found that there is limited opportunities for Latinos in the conservation space. Hispanics and Latino employees only represent 5.6% of the Park Service, despite accounting for 18.5% of the US population. How can we address this lack of Hispanic representation in conservation field? And how can Latinos help and volunteer to advance these great causes?
Thank you, Latina Style, for putting us on the map, right? So now that you see us, you can be us. I think it's really important. Again, representation matters. You are there, though, at the park. So what I found in even my own organization is that Latinos obviously do not take themselves and put themselves out there in leadership. You need to put your hand up to be chosen. And because not only because of being Latina, as your perspectives matter today in anything being done in this country, as far as business, philanthropic work, as our voices matter, our perspective on our culture matters, and really visibility matters. So it can be done. And I am seeing significant work being done across all channels in this country, private sector and public sector work being done. But really, honestly, it took me a long time to raise my hand and say, choose me because I'm a Latina and because my perspectives and the way I was raised and the way I honor my culture is important, because every single person looking at us is either a consumer or somebody who's living in this country, and not being able to tap into ourselves in leadership is what's holding us back. So please just make yourself visible in the organization and you will rise, because it's very, very critical in today's business environment.
And I would just add that you can see yourself reflected in the leadership of the Department of Interior. Assistant Secretary Shannon Estinos is the highest ranking Latina in the Interior Department. She is actually the boss of the Director of the National Park Service. So you can see yourself there. We have a long line of Latinos who have paved the way for us in this space. Ken Salazar, now the ambassador to Mexico, already mentioned David Vela, Pedro Ramos, the longtime, very successful superintendent at Everglades, and on and on. But you can see yourself. But I do agree with Patty. Raise your hand and lean in.
Ruth, what is that? What do you see coming across your desk that is a major priority? I imagine funding must be one of them, but what are some of the major priorities that you have at the foundation?
How much time do you have, Robert?
Yeah. How much you got? There's a lot of priorities.
I want to make a point here, and that is, we truly are tethered at the National Park Foundation to the National Park Service. You know, they are our mothership. They are who drive our fundraising priorities. So when the director of the National Park Service comes to us and says, cleaning out the oyster farm in Drake's Estero at Point Reyes National Seashore is my #1 priority. We turn our attention to a particular project. If the director of the Park Service comes to us and says, we need to preserve a section of land and inholding in Grand Tetons, we get busy and we raise money. In that particular instance, $23 million to secure that critical inholding. So the Park Service drives our fundraising activity. Currently, we are working in collaboration with them around some important pillars. Again, all organized under Protect and Connect. But we are funding projects in the history and culture, the workforce of the tomorrow, parks of the future, connecting audiences. I'm going to forget the other 3 now that I'm on the spot. So we have projects in each of those pillars that we sit down with a donor, we sit down with a corporate prospect, and we say, these are the opportunities we have, and we try to connect a donor passion with a Park Service need.
So right now, did it start snowing already in the parks?
Yeah, we had, I think, many inches in Montana, I noticed. Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah, Jackson Hole's getting some snow.
Yeah, I live in Las Vegas. In 30 minutes, we have a local mountain. It snowed 2 days ago, and I live in Las Vegas. So yeah, it goes from very hot to very cold very fast here. So there is definitely snow coming, or here already.
All the animals that hibernate already are under, or they're building their caves, or
early.
The elk are starting to migrate back up to Yellowstone, I know, out of Jackson, and the bears are just getting the last of the bear, whatever they can get, and they're ready to go in. We had a lot of bear in our neighborhood this last month, a lot.
Well, and we just named a winner in the Fat Bear contest up at Katmai National Park.
I saw that. Yeah.
So we're turning the calendar toward the winter months.
Well, that bear made the national news all over the place.
He did. He did.
But it seems that it's the same bear every year that is like the fat bear.
Funny.
I mean, did you live
So
in a
how is the visitation during wintertime at the parks?
Well, Yellowstone, I think, is closed down but there's snowmobile traffic in Yellowstone in particular. And you can take private guided tours, but there is no, you can't drive through the park because there's just too much snow on the roads. And so for that, and then parts of Teton Park areas shut down, but there's access. A lot of it's on foot or snowmobile or pack mule or whatever you're using. Snowshoes. You get there through snowshoes.
Ruth, are there any sites that are like dig sites, anthropological sites? Do you have, universities over there digging, trying to find, I don't know, from dinosaurs to mammoth to whatever, should be under there?
Well, have you been down to Waco? Right down the street from you there in Dallas, there's an amazing site that was one of the newer national park sites named. I think it's probably been a park's last 5 years, but it preserves a mammoth herd was somehow killed, and it was the herd was buried, and over the thousands of years were preserved. And then through archaeological digs, these were uncovered. And so, yes, we have sites like that. We have sites in Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona that preserve the lives of the Pueblo Indians and other indigenous communities all through the West. So it's not just the big landscape parks. There's always other interesting things to see.
So how about those alien paintings that you see on the rocks?
There's even indigenous paintings on rocks in Big Bend. I had never seen until a recent trip to the park, and it's quite spectacular. And that does present a dynamic for the Park Service. How do you allow the public to see and experience that and kind of reflect on what that means in terms of your own culture, but also protecting it so that somehow it's the Organic Act that established the Park Service talks about perpetual, making certain that these places are there for the generations to come. So it's a balancing act of making sure things are accessible while also protecting them for future generations.
And how about the animal population? How is the bisons, steady? And then you have that big issue, that reintroducing wolves into places where they had been gone. How is that coming along too?
Robert, we weren't supposed to talk about wolves or bison.
Oh,
Was that on the list of do not ask?
I didn't get that memo. What, are they misbehaving?
No,
Well, Yellowstone is, it's home to over 200 different species of animals. So you've got, it seems very healthy when I'm up there. I've been through there and there's a lot of bison. And one thing people don't realize, they are very dangerous animals. You do not get close or stand anywhere near a bison. You could be the last picture you take. They're wild animals. We are in there. And I think it's so important for people, anybody across the board, to really respect when you go into some of these natural parks, like the bigger ones, and Yellowstone, Yosemite, and Tetons and Big Bend, and those that are really, natural. You are a visitor. Treat it as such. Treat it with respect. Treat the animals. That's their home. We're just visiting. So it's very important to be so conscientious of that.
Well said, Mindy. Yes, we have another question about how to join the local friends groups.
Well, I would suggest going to the website of the National Park site that you're interested in. And from the website, there should be a link to a local friends group, if there is one. All of the big parks will have a local philanthropic partner. But the website of the Park Service or the park site itself would be a good place to go to navigate yourself. Or you can always reach out to me and I'll connect you.
Excellent. Do we have more questions, Gloria?
We do. We have one more. Patty, you are part of a large Latina network. Any plans to implement a Latina-wide visit to national parks?
Well, I co-own We All Grow Latina. It's a community of impactful Latinas where we really elevate the voices and stories of us. So I co-own the company. So absolutely, I'm going to bring the love of the parks into We All Grow Latina. I also have Patty Rodriguez with Los Libros, and she's a co-host of Ryan Seacrest in LA. She's a lover of parks. And so I think we get her voice on board. But yes, definitely. We talk about the parks. We were sharing Latina style event today within our We All Grow Latina community. We're having our first summit post-COVID. It sells out usually in 2 hours next September. So I'm sure we will have some representation there because I will be there. But yeah, I'm excited to share, the passion that we share together. And really just the ask for the commitment of the Latino community, because I always say when one grows, we all grow. So that's our mission at We All Grow. But again, I'm an investor of Latino-owned companies. I really feel like we should support each other in this community and in our philanthropic work. So that's why I continually am asking other Latino leaders in our country to come together as one to really support what we're doing and preserving our history.
Thank you, Patty, for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have one last one. I said the other one was last one, but this one, anyone can take it. My son loves our visits to national parks and is interested in becoming a park ranger. How can I foster his interest?
Have him become a junior park ranger.
Yeah.
There's ways to get that, right? How does that, I had my junior park ranger badge bestowed upon me by David Vela. I know I wasn't a junior anymore, but I was very proud to get my junior park ranger badge. So Patty or Ruth, how does one youngster get that?
It's a program at every park. So when you go into a visitor center, you ask about, what do I need to do to get my Junior Ranger badge for that particular site? There's activities that are designed to educate the young person about the particular features of that park. And then there's a little swearing in ceremony, and it's all very special. I would also suggest a way to get your foot in the door, so to speak, is by participating in conservation corps. Those young people are actually deployed in our national parks. They're seeing up close and personal what a life, what a career might be as a National Park Service employee, and that would be a good place to get involved. And then also, once you're in college and there's a educational base, then you can maybe begin to volunteer. I know there's always a lot of teachers that volunteer in park service sites during the summer, who ultimately become seasonal rangers and then full-time employees. So it is a slow, steady process, but those are a couple of suggestions I have for you.
If someone's really interested and they're, college age, they can go to a website called Park Ranger EDU. It's .org, and it will show you how to become a park ranger, basically, and you can learn from any age. You want to say, are you going to be more in the law enforcement part of it, or do you want to be in the conservation and protection or education? Because there's different parts. You could be in the national or the municipal. You just have to really get clear on how you want to serve best, and that's a good place to start. parkrangeredu.org.
Nice.
Gotta get more park rangers out there, spreading the word.
Thank you, ladies. We all set. Robert, back to you.
Thank you so much, ladies, for all that wonderful information and for all the work that you do. Because in addition to the National Park Foundation, you do a lot of other work that is very, very important to our community. Ruth, how many people work for the foundation?
We have 100 people. I think we're budgeted for 105 people in this fiscal year. When I joined the foundation in 2014, I was number 39. So we've experienced tremendous growth over the last several years, due in large part to the leadership of our board and our president and CEO, Will Shafroth. But I think our growth is reflective of the love that the American people, and indeed the world, has for these very special places. And our fundraising has continued to increase year over year. And with that, we're able to grow our programs, grow our impact, all in service of the National Park Service. So it's we're 105 now, and with as the board knows, we've got plans to grow even more.
Also, Robert, the thing about the parks too, as I know we're kind of starting to wrap up, but your readership probably has a lot of people that have done, have had significant success, like men and women alike, and maybe looking for a place to make an impact. I mean, we are starting a capital campaign too at the Park Foundation, and we can allocate generous gifts to go towards Latino sites if there's an interest in, being part of a preservation in those particular sites. And aside from the large gifts, which we're always looking for because those have a huge impact, every small little gift that is given, the smallest, means you're part of it. And here's something that all of your readers should know, and I have done this myself. When you shop on Amazon, if you go in there to Smile Amazon, you can select the National Park Foundation or the National Park Service as your selected charity. And we received a pretty nice, significant, almost $100,000 this year from Amazon shoppers just by selecting that as their preferred charity, and a % of that goes from Amazon given into that particular charity. So you can support the park by shopping.
Which we all do because we're like.
Buddy, can you tell us? Go ahead, Ruth.
I was just going to say, before we run out of time, I don't want to miss the opportunity to invite Lupita and Robert to let us take you to some of these amazing Latino heritage sites. We will meet you there. We will have special ranger lectures, and we will make it a trip of a lifetime for you. So I wanted to offer that for you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Robert needs to urgently make it to the Grand Canyon.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
And definitely to Yellowstone, that's for sure. Patty, thank you so much, Ruth. That's very, very kind. Patty, tell us about the board. How do you become a board member?
I became a board member because, yeah, Mr. Stearns, Mindy's husband, we actually do some other work together in the mortgage space. So I was introduced to the board, and like I said, I was very intimidated when I looked at the names of the other board members. You know, it took me a while to be comfortable in my Latina isms, but yeah, just becoming aware of opportunities is really important, and putting ourselves out there. I think that once you start to talk about the NPF, National Park Foundation, and the parks you will see that a lot of your readers will be very interested in supporting what we're doing as Latinas in parks.
So this will be by invitation. Is that what
It's
you're
by
saying?
invitation.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
usually somebody within the board either sponsors or recognizes or reaches out, and there's a vetting process, and then there's an appointment and approval by the Interior, Secretary of Interiors, and there's a process that it goes through because it is a government, entity. So, but it is, like I said, it's comprised of all political realms. This is not a political organization. So, we just have underneath the, whoever's sitting in the seat at that point is kind of who we answer to. But, we are all about America and all walks of life and all political parties. And that's why I love to be part of it.
Which is very refreshing in these times, right?
It's very,
To be in a
very.
place where we all agree on one thing, that we need to
What's the
preserve
size of the
parks.
board?
That was
Yeah.
my next question.
What's the what?
The size of the
size.
board.
How many are on the board?
We're 28 citizens, and the director of the National Park Service and the Secretary of the Interior are ex officio members of our board. So 28 private citizens and then the 2 ex officio.
Well,
And-
obviously you have the support of our friend Congressman Grijalva, and not that I mean to lecture, but please take advantage of it, because he's very, when he says something, he means it. He's not going to put you in the back pocket over there and pull you out to say that, yeah, I supported this. He is very proactive, and we were delighted to have the chance to have him here today. When we leave this webinar or this meeting, we're going to be working. Gloria is actually our managing editor. Gloria will be working already on the story that we're going to have in Latina Style, both on the magazine and online. So any thoughts, anything? But like, for instance, I was thinking, do you have a funny experience that you can share, either one of you over there?
At the park. Well, probably when our.
At the board.
at the
Or at the board?
Oh, no, there's lots of funny. I mean.
We do like to laugh a lot. I can't
Yeah,
think
we
of
do.
anything
I mean,
specific.
when we took the hike in Yosemite, and Al Baldwin, who is much older than us, really outdid us in our hike. I was ready to quit half while through. I'm like, when are we going back? And he just kept going. Look, like I said, if you look at the makeup of the board, it is really some of the biggest givers in our country participate on this board. And I respect that. And I hope to be able to mirror that as a Latina in the future. And for my grandkids, who are one of my first grandkid being born in two months, a little Latina, so that she gets to see me as a board member of such a prestigious organization, and that she wants to rise and follow me in my footsteps. So that's really important to me.
Robert, my is not funny. But you alluded to my role. I just don't ever want to lose a board member. We're on these hikes, and we have some that are straggling, and I just want to keep my board members all together and on the same trail. So that's my story about board meetings.
Well, I think our time it's up, but before we conclude, I want to thank all of you. First of all, I want to thank Ruth, Alana, and Naomi for bringing us together.
Yes, thank you, lady.
It's been a privilege to be with all of you, and we look forward to be able to continue working with you. Are you doing any ongoing series of of meetings like this throughout the year, because a lot of the stuff is getting done this time around because everybody says, oh, Hispanic Heritage Month. And it's, you know, we say it's Hispanic, you know, Hysteria Month. Hispanic Hysteria Month, because everybody in the world, you know, is doing something. But something around, you know, the year, if you have a calendar, we would love to share it with our audience.
I haven't asked. I think that if we could get all
Absolutely.
your readers to follow us on our social media accounts, that would be really supportive. We share a lot of information via social media, not only personally myself, but especially with the National Park Foundation. So they do a really great job of telling the stories in the parks and what we are doing as an organization on our social media. We just need the support of the following and then for them to share our information. So I would have a huge ask for that from all the Latina readers of Latina Style.
Oh, absolutely. We would love to. And through all our partner organizations as well, because we have, you know, pretty much every major woman in Latino organization and Latina organization in the country is one of our partners. So the reach, we reach, you know, all the way across and even outside the United States. So from us, we would really like to thank you. And before we close, I want to go back to one issue that it's really, you know, it's been rotating in my mind, if you will. Ruth and Patty and Mindy, I want to thank the firefighters that are there on the front lines fighting for, you know, to protect the parks. All the time we're talking about first responders, and first responders can mean anything, anywhere, you know, because a first responder, it can be from a healthcare provider to a policeman and the firefighters. But you know, whenever we see the parks, and almost immediately on the news is when you see the firefighters putting their lives on the line to protect the parks there. So please don't forget my offer. My offer, Patty, to you and to Ruth and to Mindy is genuine. If you want to, especially you had a whole woman, or was it all Latina firefighting crew, you know, at the parks over there. So we'd love to be able to bring them out to the attention of our audience. And as we come into the end of Hispanic Heritage Month, I want you to know that for Latina Style, Hispanic Heritage Month is not one day, it's not 30 days, it's 365 days around the clock. So there is not a time where we're not available, you know, to be able to do something to help our community. So Lupita.
Thank you so much, ladies. It has been a privilege to join this space this morning with you.
And I apologize to Ruth. I apologize to Ruth and Naomi because I always get in trouble for this, that I never take the questions that are submitted to me to please ask this question. I usually go with the flow, but I hope that we got all the information that we needed to get out the other way.
And you just don't learn, but
yeah,
it's okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, hey, I'm sure someone is going to want to ask this and didn't. They want to know how they can give to the parks. If they go to nationalparks.org, you can go right there and give anywhere from $5 to 5 million. Well, if you want to give 5 million, you might want to call Ruth.
So
we welcome it all. But, you know, nationalparks.org, that's how you can go right now and just help. Like, just everything you do will make a difference. Every penny counts. So thank you for your support. And thank you, Robert. Thank you so much for having us.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a privilege, and let's stay in touch. Let's not just, you know, forget about us.
No, we'll meet you in the Grand Canyon.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Thank you for everything.
No, and before anybody logs off, we have I asked actually Alana to put together something for us to be the end to the conference. So Maru, can you please run the?
We get a group shot.
We have a video that I asked, you know, when they were telling me, I was asking them what kind of videos you have. So we were able to secure through Alana and Naomi. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Everybody smile. I'm taking a picture.
Okay.
Awesome.
Maru, There we go.
It's constant, continuous, and contagious. Invigorating, inspiring, unrelenting, undeniable. At the National Park Foundation, we call this feeling wonder. And the only thing more unstoppable is our mission to help it thrive. It starts out small, a stirring, a feeling. And then it grows until finally it gets so big that feeling becomes a connection. At the National Park Foundation, we call it wonder. And the only thing bigger is our mission to help it thrive.
See it, Ruth? They're there.
I love that one.
To take it all in, to leave it all behind, to see it for ourselves, to still not believe our eyes, to scream with joy, to be left speechless, to reflect, to reconnect, to pass it on. No matter why we're here, we've come to the right place.
Those are so great.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
I love those. I love those.
So looking forward to continuing the conversation at the next time around. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you
Stay
so
safe
much
and
for your
stay
time.
well.
Have a
Thank you,
beautiful
ladies.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.